They thought speed meant noise. He proved them wrong. They said speed was simple. More bullets, more fire, more noise. They said the loudest weapon wins. They said if you weren't spraying the dark with metal, you were falling behind. And they said it while looking at him, the quiet rifleman at the edge of the position, the one who didn't chase sound. He didn't argue, because arguing is what you do when you still think people change their minds. He just checked his rifle, he checked his breathing, he checked the angles nobody else bothered to watch. And when the attack came, he proved something most soldiers learn too late. Noise can feel like speed, but noise is often just panic that got promoted. Real speed is different. Real speed is decision. And that night, one quiet rifle moved faster than a storm of gunfire ever could. The position was ugly and ordinary. A ridge line that cut across a muddy field, a shallow trench that pretended to be protection, sandbags stacked like a promise nobody could verify. To the left, a machine gun nest. To the right, broken trees and a narrow path through brush. Behind them, darkness and the quiet threat of being surrounded. They were told it would be calm. That word is always a lie. Calm just means the problem hasn't introduced itself yet. The men sat and waited, chewing on boredom like it was rations. Someone cleaned a weapon that was already clean. Someone smoked with shaking hands while pretending not to. Someone made a joke that sounded brave until you listened closely. And then the argument returned. The machine gunner, proud of the weapon's weight, said it again. Speed wins. He tapped the ammo belt like it was proof. Speed is volume. Speed is loud. A few men nodded, because nodding is easy. The quiet rifleman didn't. Not because he was smarter, because he'd seen what happens when everyone mistakes sound for control. The first warning wasn't a shot. It was the air. The wind shifted and carried something faint and metallic. A smell like oiled steel. A smell like movement. He felt it more than he thought it. He leaned forward and listened, not to the ridge, to the gaps, to the spaces where silence should have been filled. A twig snapped somewhere ahead. The machine gunner raised his head and grinned. Finally, he whispered, like he wanted the night to start bleeding just to relieve the boredom. The squad leader lifted a hand. Hold. The men froze, eyes fixed on the black tree line. They were waiting for the obvious. The rifleman was waiting for the real, because the obvious is what gets you killed first. A shape moved, then another. They weren't sprinting, they weren't shouting, they weren't charging. They were doing the one thing that turns loud weapons into awkward tools. They were spreading out. The machine gunner whispered, "Let him get closer." He wanted a clean burst, a moment where the enemy would be forced into a line. But the enemy didn't give him that moment. They stayed broken. They stayed low. They stayed smart. The rifleman lifted his weapon and settled into the stock as if it had been waiting for his cheek. He didn't chase a silhouette. He found the leader, not by rank, by motion. One man moved with certainty. Others moved with him. That's leadership. He aimed where confidence lived, and he fired. One shot, sharp, clean, final in its intention. For half a second, the world paused. Then the enemy responded with light. Flashes sparked through the tree line like angry insects. The ridge line woke up. Men dropped into cover. Dirt kicked up. The machine gun opened and ripped the darkness. Noise erupted, and everyone felt it. The relief of being loud. The false comfort of believing that sound means you're winning. The machine gun thundered in long bursts. The gunner smiled through clenched teeth like the weapon made him powerful just by existing. The ammo belt crawled through his hands. The muzzle flashes strobed the trench. Men shouted encouragement, because noise does that. It makes you feel like something is happening. The problem was simple. The enemy didn't stop. They didn't freeze under the roar. They moved around it. They found angles.
They slipped through places the machine gun couldn't cover without turning its whole body. And turning a machine gun is slow in the only way that matters, slow to adapt. The squad leader realized it too late. His eyes jumped left and right. The machine gun was doing what it was built to do, but the battlefield wasn't shaped for it. Then the riflemen began to work. Not loudly, not dramatically, just efficiently. Crack, cycle, crack. Each shot separated from the next like a metronome. No wasted motion, no frantic jerks, just rhythm. And with each crack, an enemy movement stopped. Not because of luck, because he wasn't shooting noise, he was shooting decisions. There's a moment in every firefight when men realize the truth about speed. The moment when the loudest weapon becomes background. The moment when you notice the enemy is still advancing, still breathing, still planning. The machine gun kept firing, but now it sounded different, less like control, more like pleading. The rifleman fired again, and someone on the far right dropped behind a tree and didn't rise. The enemy's flank movement hesitated. A pause. That pause was priceless, because pauses are how you steal time, and time is the only currency that keeps you alive. The squad leader saw it. He pointed to the right, shouting orders. 2 men shifted to cover. The machine gun kept roaring, pinning the center. The rifleman kept cutting the edges, and the ridgeline stopped being a target. It became a trap. The enemy tried a new tactic. They stopped firing for a moment. Sudden silence, the kind that makes your stomach tighten. Then multiple flashes erupted from different points. They were trying to confuse. They were trying to flood the ridge with threats so the defenders wouldn't know where to look. It worked on the loud thinkers. Men fired wildly into darkness, short bursts, long bursts, anything to feel busy. Noise multiplied, and as noise multiplied, accuracy died. The rifleman didn't join the panic. He watched the pattern. He waited for the only thing that matters in chaos: commitment. Because anyone can peak and vanish, but when a man commits to movement, when he shifts weight forward, when he crosses a gap, that's when he becomes real. That's when he can be stopped. He waited for the first committed movement, then he fired. The committed movement ended. No drama, just removal. The enemy's plan lost a piece. Then he waited again and again. The rifle's rhythm didn't change, but the battlefield did. Because every time the enemy tried to turn noise into cover, the quiet shot punished it. The machine gunner began to struggle. Not emotionally, physically. The barrel heated. The weapon demanded discipline. The gunner had discipline, but the weapon demanded more. The belt ran down. The assistant gunner fumbled for more ammo. Someone shouted, "Low!" That word is poison. The enemy doesn't need to understand your language. They can hear your tempo change. They can hear your bursts shorten. They can hear your confidence cracking. And they pushed, a wave of movement through the right side brush. Close now, too close. The squad leader's throat grew dry. This was the moment when usually volume saves you. But the volume was thinning. The machine gun fired again, stuttering between belts. The rifleman didn't look at the gun. He looked at the brush. And he did something most men don't do under pressure. He slowed down. Not his hands, his mind. He didn't fire at the first shadow. He fired at the one shadow that moved like it knew where it was going. A leader again. One shot. The movement behind it faltered. 2 men froze, unsure if the path was still safe. The rifleman fired again. Now they weren't advancing. They were thinking. And thinking is slow. That's the irony. Noise makes you feel fast. Thinking makes you actually fast, because it stops the enemy from being fast. The squad leader crawled closer to the rifleman and shouted, "How are you seeing them?" The rifleman didn't answer. Not because he was arrogant, because answers take time. He just adjusted his aim 2 degrees and fired again. In the brief muzzle flash, the squad leader saw the truth. The rifleman wasn't seeing in the way the others were trying to see. He was hunting decisions. He watched the ground where someone had to step, the gap between 2 rocks, the narrow lane between a stump and a tree. The battlefield was a chessboard. The enemy had to move pieces. He was removing the squares. That's not loud speed, that's quiet speed. The enemy began to fear the rifle, not as an object, as a presence, because you can't reason with a presence. A machine gun is obvious. You know where it is, you know what it's doing, you know how to avoid it. But a calm rifle that keeps stopping you at the edge of your plans, that feels like the darkness is choosing sides. The enemy tried to locate him. They fired